Ever pondered the human cost of World War I? Let's delve into it. World War I, also known as the Great War, was a conflict of unprecedented scale and brutality. It claimed the lives of over 16 million people, both military personnel and civilians alike. These were lives cut short, sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, all swallowed by the gaping maw of war. The trenches of Europe became, in essence, a bloody theater of death and despair. Soldiers from across the globe, from the green fields of England to the snowy expanses of Russia, were thrust into a relentless storm of bullets and shell fire. Amidst the smoke and the mud, the true face of war was revealed, its grim visage a haunting testament to human conflict. This was not just a war, it was a bloodbath, a human catastrophe on a scale the world had never seen before. This massive loss of life was just the first ripple in the pond. War is a costly affair, isn't it? Indeed, the monetary cost of World War I was astronomical. Countries on both sides of the conflict were plunged into debt, borrowing heavily to fund the war effort. This financial strain led to economic instability, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond the battlefield. In Germany, for instance, the war and the subsequent reparations imposed by the Treaty of Versailles led to hyperinflation, with the value of the German mark plummeting. In Britain, the war's cost resulted in an increased national debt that amounted to over 180% of the country's gross domestic product. Meanwhile, in the United States, the war sparked an economic boom, as the country supplied arms and other goods to the Allies. However, this boom was short-lived and ultimately led to the Great Depression in the 1930s. This economic turmoil set the stage for political changes. Can you imagine a world without the Austro-Hungarian Empire or the Ottoman Empire? This was the reality following World War I. The war was a catalyst for seismic political changes, leading to the collapse of these once mighty empires. Europe and the Middle East, as we know them today, were fundamentally reshaped. The German Empire, too, couldn't withstand the turmoil of the war, and the Russian Empire crumbled under the weight of revolution. These changes weren't just lines on a map. They were the birth of new nations and the death of old ways. Yet the political upheaval didn't stop there. The world was left searching for order amidst chaos. The solution? A controversial treaty that sought to redraw the world, assign blame, and ensure peace. But as we'll explore in the next scene, this treaty was far from perfect. The political upheaval led to the signing of a controversial treaty. Ever heard of a peace treaty that led to another war? Well, that's the strange irony of the Treaty of Versailles. Signed in 1919, it was supposed to mark the end of the world's first global conflict, World War I, but in reality, it lit the fuse for the next one. The Treaty of Versailles was more of an act of revenge than a peace agreement. The victors, particularly France and Britain, sought to punish Germany for the devastation caused. They imposed harsh penalties, including hefty reparations and territorial losses. Germany was also forced to accept full responsibility for the war, a stipulation known as the War Guilt Clause. These stringent terms crippled Germany economically and socially, causing widespread resentment among its people. This resentment was exploited by a certain Adolf Hitler, who rallied the Germans with promises of restoring their lost pride and power. And thus, the seeds for another world conflict were sown. This resentment sowed the seeds for another world conflict. What if there was an organization to prevent future wars? Well, in the wake of World War I, such an organization was born. We're talking about the League of Nations. Established in 1920, it was the brainchild of President Woodrow Wilson of the United States. This was the first international organization whose principal mission was to maintain world peace. Its primary goals included preventing wars through collective security and disarmament, and settling international disputes through negotiation and arbitration. The League of Nations was an ambitious attempt to change the way international relations worked, to replace the old systems of alliances and power politics with a new world order based on cooperation and dialogue. However, despite its noble goals, the League was beset by problems from the start. It lacked enforcement power, and several key nations, including the United States, never joined. These flaws would ultimately lead to its downfall, but that's a story for another time. But the war also brought about technological advancements. Did you know World War I was a catalyst for technological innovation? The urgency of the conflict sparked an unprecedented leap in technology. It was a time of rapid evolution, where the old met the new on the battlefield. Horses, a symbol of centuries-old warfare, found themselves alongside tanks, the steel beasts that heralded a new era of combat. The skies, once the realm of birds, became the domain of warplanes, transforming warfare into a three-dimensional arena. Submarines took the fight beneath the waves, introducing a stealthy element to naval warfare. And let's not forget the birth of chemical weapons, a grim testament to mankind's ingenuity turned destructive. Communication technology also made great strides, with telephones and radios making their way into the trenches, shrinking the vast battlefields. Indeed, World War I was a crucible that forged the tools of modern warfare. These innovations weren't the only changes. Society transformed too. How did World War I empower women and advance civil rights? It's fascinating how such a horrific conflict could lead to something so progressive. The war created a void in employment as millions of men left their jobs to fight. This void was filled by women who stepped into roles traditionally reserved for men. They worked in factories, drove ambulances, served as nurses, and even took on administrative jobs. This not only changed societal perceptions about women's capabilities, but also sparked a wave of female empowerment. Women's suffrage movements gained momentum in many countries, leading to women attaining the right to vote in the years following the war. The war also stirred civil rights movements. For instance, African American soldiers who served in Europe returned with a renewed determination to fight racial discrimination in the United States. So, World War I, amidst its devastation, inadvertently propelled societal change, liberating many from the shackles of outdated norms. This societal shift was accompanied by a psychological shift. Can you imagine the mental toll of World War I? The horrors of war did not end on the battlefield for many who served and survived. Soldiers returned home bearing not just physical wounds, but also deep psychological scars. The term shell shock was coined during this time to describe the range of mental traumas experienced by soldiers, which we now understand as post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. But it wasn't just soldiers who suffered. Civilians, too, experienced profound psychological trauma. They had witnessed the destruction of their homes, the loss of loved ones, and the shattering of their previously held worldviews. In a time when mental health was poorly understood, these invisible wounds were often overlooked and untreated. These psychological scars had profound implications. They influenced art, literature, and philosophy, giving rise to movements like Dadaism and existentialism. This mental toll, therefore, left a lasting imprint on society. The war also drastically reshaped the world map. Have you ever wondered why the world map looks the way it does today? World War I played a significant role in shaping the geopolitical landscape we see now. In the aftermath of the Great War, borders were redrawn and new nations emerged, fundamentally altering the world map. Empires crumbled, and based on the principle of national self-determination, nations like Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Yugoslavia were born. This monumental shift was not without its challenges. The process of redrawing borders ignited ethnic tensions, disputed territories, and political conflicts that have reverberated through the decades, shaping the course of history. The redrawing of borders was a consequence of World War I that continues to have a profound impact, shaping international relations and conflicts even in the 21st century. So, the next time you look at a world map, remember, the lines that divide us are more than just ink on paper. They are a testament to our past. The legacy of World War I continues to echo today. Does World War I still affect us today? One might think that the dust of World War I has long settled. Yet, the legacy of conflict and instability it left behind still permeates our world. The war didn't just redraw borders, it planted seeds of discord, sowing the soil for future conflicts. Unresolved territorial disputes and simmering ethnic tensions were consequences of hastily drawn borders and the collapse of empires. This laid the groundwork for numerous conflicts, from the Balkans to the Middle East. Moreover, the punitive measures imposed by the Treaty of Versailles on Germany stoked resentment, setting the stage for the rise of fascism and eventually World War II. Even beyond these direct effects, World War I fundamentally altered perceptions of war. It shattered notions of glory and honor associated with battle, replacing them with the grim reality of modern warfare. It's clear that the echoes of World War I can still be heard today.
Years to follow. Immerse yourself in this captivating snapshot of history. Subscribe and share to continue the journey through time. Join us again as we delve deeper into the past with more history shorts.